You're listening to the Quint's podcast.
2019 had been a milestone year for actor Sushant Singh Rajput. He managed to attain the notoriously elusive sweet spot of critical acclaim and commercial success. While Sonchiriya received enormous praise from the critics, Chichhore emerged as one of the biggest hits at the box office. In Chichhore, Sushant played a middle-aged father to a teenage son battling a failed suicide attempt. The film's success ensured a brief engagement in the press and social media on issues such as mental health, anxiety, and depression. 9 months after the film, on 14th June, news of actor Sushant Singh Rajput's death has once again catapulted mental health into living room conversations, social media posts, and news debates. The incident, however, has turned the lens also at those covering the actor's death, not just suicides. The media's approach, understanding, and handling of issues related to mental health have long been problematic. Where exactly do these problems lie? How can one identify these problems? And how can we move towards empathetic, sensitive, and responsible media coverage? You're tuned in to The Big Story, the podcast where we dissect the headline-making news for you, and I am your host, Sushant. Sushant's 7-year journey in Hindi cinema may have been brief, but his 11 films are a testimony to his range as an actor. Having graduated from television to the big screen in 2013, Sushant moved briskly from one character to another, slipping into contrasting personas with ease. His debut as a fierce young Gujarati in Kai Poche and coming of age as a brooding Bengali detective Byomkesh Bokshi 2 years later were punctuated by set-piece romantic roles in Shuddh Desi Romance and PK. Having established his acting credentials, Sushant's big leap into the big league of stardom in 2016 with Dhoni was quick, entertaining, and self-assured, just like a classic Mahendra Singh Dhoni innings. With impactful films like Kedarnath, Sonchiriya, and Chichhore that followed, the 34-year-old actor, to the regular film lover, was a charming hero, to trade analysts, a profitable star, and to critics, a dependable actor. The news of his untimely death, however, has once again prodded several media houses into speculation and salaciousness. Dr. Soumitra Pathare, consultant psychiatrist and director of Center for Mental Health, Law and Policy at ILS College, Pune, spoke with the Quint and explained how media can be culpable in complicating mental health issues in society.
Many people in the media get very upset when we say, oh, media should mind its language and should report properly. And they somehow think that this is interfering with the media's right to free reporting. It's nothing of that. It's basically based on research. There's a lot of research evidence which shows that how media reports suicide can actually influence suicide rates. Okay, so bad reporting by the media can actually increase suicides, whereas good reporting by the media can reduce or help towards reducing suicide rates. So in fact, it's one of the 6 things that WHO says there is good evidence for if you are doing suicide prevention, and one of the 6 things is media reporting and addressing that. The committed word is something that even AP, the Associated Press, in their guidelines say that they don't use that because it somehow implies something to do with criminality or to do with intent of some sort, or mainly criminal intent. And so that's one of the reasons why they say don't use it, when there are other better words that can be used. You need to focus on the life of the person rather than the death of the person. The death is something that is, as somebody said famously, death and taxes are the only 2 certainties in life. So we are all going to die. And I think the emphasis should not be on the death as much, or the manner of the death or the mode of the death, but actually focus on their life. Like, for example, if somebody had to die of a heart attack, you don't focus your whole story on the heart attack, isn't it? You focus your story on their life, what they were doing. I mean, there'll probably be a one-line mention of the fact that, oh, they were ailing and they had a heart problem or something like that.
A particularly shocking development, just hours after Sushant's death becoming public, was the circulation of an image, allegedly, of his dead body on WhatsApp. While this represented an extreme case of insensitivity, Dr. Pathare points out that the mainstream newspapers and television channels have too adopted and normalized the usage of certain types of images in its coverage which are problematic. Similarly, it is incumbent upon the media to also reevaluate its vocabulary when it comes to writing about suicide.
Well, there are a lot of guidelines on that too, about imagery and which images to use, which images not to use. For example, if you have a suicide note, then don't publish the suicide note. In India, a lot of newspaper reporting, you'll see a story on suicide will have a stock photograph of a noose or somebody jumping off from somewhere. Now, clearly, these are not good imageries to use, and you need to avoid that because one is they're crass in many ways, but also they could trigger people. And you don't want to be discussing methods of suicide, particularly because in India about 40% of suicides happen with hanging. So if you're going to put a picture of a noose up there, then you're actually you're making it worse. You're trying to kind of almost suggest the methods that people might want to use. So I think it's very important that we don't use that kind of imagery. There's also a lot of the guidelines also talk about the language to use. Don't make it sensationalist. Don't put it on the front page headlines. Try and keep it inside. There's a lot of stuff around that, which I think journalists would definitely benefit from reading.
Unlike the previous decades, the last few years in the Hindi film industry has seen several top names speaking up about the struggles with depression, anxiety, and other aspects of mental health. While engagement with the topic has been an important first step within the industry, there are tangible steps that the media can take as well, Dr. Pathare explains. To begin with, an important first step is to get health reporters to write on suicides and not crime reporters, as has always been the practice and continues to be so.
And if you're going to talk about suicide, it makes no sense to just get into the gory details of everything. What you want to do is to use that occasion to educate people and to highlight what is missing, or to make a point to the policy makers on what they want to do. So while you do want to talk about the story, and that can be a useful starting point to write an article about suicide, which does not unfortunately happen. And one of the reasons I think that happens is because in India, suicide is not reported by health reporters. Suicide is reported by crime reporters. For some reason, if you go to every newspaper and speak to the health reporters, they say, oh, we don't cover suicide. Suicide is covered by the crime people. And that is because the reports about suicide are obtained from the police. And the only people who are in touch with the police tend to be crime reporters. And so crime reporters tend to publish suicide stories, and crime reporters, as with all crime, there seems to be a sense of the feeling of making it very sensationalist or putting every single detail into it. So I think two things that editors need to do is obviously educate their journalists, definitely, but also move suicide reporting from crime reporting reporters to health. Yeah, because health reporters tend to be more sensitive. They understand these things. They've been through it with many other illnesses. They know what we are talking about. Getting the message across to crime reporters has been actually harder. And that's really a problem.
Dr. Pathare also goes on to share a vital insight about correlating depression with suicide and vice versa. He reminds the media and the public in general that the two are not always related.
That is a problem for two reasons. One is, a lot of this data of the link between depression and suicide usually has come from Western countries, where nearly 80% of people who die by suicide will have a depressive illness. And so clearly depression is the big thing if you are considering or working in a Western country. The problem is in India, that's not true. In India, research shows that roughly around 50% of people may have a mental health problem, but the other 50% don't have a mental health problem. So you can't be making an excuse all the time that oh, it's all mental illness kind of a thing. And there are many suicides that happen without mental illness. So I think that's an important thing. The second important thing to remember is that not everyone with mental illness dies of suicide. Okay, even in depression, about 1 to 2 out of 10 people will die of suicide. Okay, the remaining 8 don't. So I think it's very important that you don't present it as an inevitability, which is that, oh, if you have depression, you're going to die of suicide. That's not inevitable.
We at the Quint are continuously educating ourselves on reporting better and with greater sensitivity on mental health. We may falter at times, but we are learning. In our coverage of health journalism, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, one of our primary focus has been on mental health. If you are suicidal or know anyone in distress, please do not hesitate to reach out to the local emergency helplines and services mentioned in the text below.